Aye.
All right. Welcome everyone to City Council meeting for February 26th. If we could have a roll call to establish quorum, Madam Clerk.
Melissa Green? Here. Terry McClung?
I'm here.
David Mitchell?
He's here.
Christy Kendrick?
Here.
Bob Thomas?
Here.
Peggy Schneider?
Here.
We have 6.
All right. Stand and use the flag. The pledge allegiance. We've moved the flag, so. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Get a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All right. I have one item. Last Thursday, we opened up the bids for the Flint Steel Armstrong tunnel repair, and I'd like to see put that on there to get the approval of the bid.
You need a motion?
Now, just put that under item 6-7 for new business.
Flint Street.
Anybody else? David?
Since we got a email from Kim today to set the proposed workshop for review of possible meetings, is there any reason to leave number 6 on the agenda, or can we delete it?
As long as everybody's aware of it, we can go ahead and delete that.
Okay.
If that's okay with everyone.
Or use it to confirm.
Yeah. All right. Any other items? All right. All those in favor of the agenda as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay. Approval of the minutes. Get a motion to approve.
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
All right. Any additions, corrections? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes as submitted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
5-1.
Right.
We have in your packet an application for planning from Beverly Abbey. I don't think we need any action needs to be taken at this point. Just to make note, the next time will be if you would contact her and talk to her, and we'll make a motion the next meeting. And we also have we do have an application from Greg Moon for the CAPC position as recommended from the CAPC. If I can get a...
I'd like to make a motion to approve Gregory Moon for the CAPC. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of Greg Moon for the CAPC position number 3, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so moved. Congratulations, Greg. We do have a vacancy on the hospital and a vacancy on the cemetery. So anybody out in public who's interested in serving, come down and fill out an application and see what we can do. Our next item is public comments on there. And please remember, we got 3 minutes for each citizen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Chris Fisher from 33 Ridgeway. I'm here tonight to share my concerns about the ongoing downhill trail project at Lake Leatherwood City Park and any other plans involving trails on city lands. In reviewing both the current LLCP master plan and master trail plan, it appears that Parks has not updated either plan for quite some time. Particularly distressing is that the Trails Plan indicates that an important goal is to create a process for public input and to engage the community in the planning and construction of new trails. The LLCP Master Plan makes no reference to any future expansion of trails in the park, and the list of improvement projects using sales tax revenue projections through 2017 also indicates no plans or concepts for exploring any partnerships to create a downhill gravity trail which is currently underway in the Miners Rock area of the park. In fact, the master trail plan clearly states the purpose of the master plan: Goal 1, educate the community. Goal 2, establish trail needs, conduct public forums annually, and assess needs. Goal 5, develop trail design standards, easement acquisition, and public notification procedures. There was no public meeting conducted by Parks or the Trails Committee to properly inform the public about any specific trail construction prior to the Parks Commission approval of the current construction contract on November 21st, 2017. To the Mayor and alderpersons representing the City of Eureka Springs, I hereby request that you consider a resolution to initiate a full review of Parks Authority to enter into the current trail building contract and to fully examine the role that the city plays within these two master plans that Council has approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks, Chris. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Good evening. My name is Faith Shaw, and I don't think I'm a resident of Eureka Springs, but I sure spend a lot of money here. And I pay a lot of sales tax, and I do a lot of charitable work, and I have volunteered possibly hundreds and hundreds of hours for the betterment of the native plant garden. And we had our first annual native plant fair, and we think 200 to 300 people came, and it was on KUAF, and it was really a great thing. I'm going to be handing out a letter that Glenda Moore sent to Parks and Rec, and it was received February 2017, begging to be at the table, to be part of the conversation, the negotiation about the future trails and conservation, especially in Lake Leatherwood City Park, it's called, and Black Bass Lake. She got verbal that yes, we're excited, we'd love to have you on board. And so when I hear people say, where have you been? Why haven't you been part of this planning? We were excluded. So that's pretty much the way it feels. And so we do have some grave concerns about the speed with which this project was rushed through. And I really encourage all of you to do a little bit more questioning about what really happened. And we did write a letter, Michael wrote a letter to the newspaper this week explaining that we had to resign from the ad hoc downhill bike trail committee. And so we couldn't be part of it. And so there's more going on. And it's basically, this got rushed through because of an agenda by the trail builder from Minnesota. This was not our agenda. This was an outside agenda. And the last thing that I want to say is, a retired business person, had I been included in this, one of my sticking points would have been that these trail builders be required to hire a proportionate number of people from Eureka Springs to build the trails. These guys are wonderful, they're young kids, they're out there, they're working their butts off, and to my knowledge, there's not one local job involved in it. And so this windfall of economic greatness that's going to come to Eureka hasn't been realized yet. And I'm very disappointed that Parks did not negotiate for at least, for every 2 people coming in from out of state, 1 local person got hired for these jobs. And so I'm concerned about the young people who are really needing to make money in this town. And I'm really sad for the shy ecosystems that got torn up for these downhill, high-speed, high-risk bike trails things.
Any other public comments?
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Being none, we will close the
Thank you, Faith.
public comments then. Under our first order of new business, we have a resolution for the new hospital property.
Motion to discuss.
Oh, second.
I think you have before you an ordinance that provides for the purchase of the piece of property that we went and had the approved for the hospital to purchase a couple of weeks ago. Not sure if there's any questions. Mr. Weaver, I think, looked through this and helped draft it up and has his signature on it. Mr. Mitchell?
Yes, for the attorney, section number 3, that the property shall be under the control of and for the use of the hospital commission at this time. At this time, my concern was, heaven forbid, should something go wrong at some point in the future and the hospital cease to exist. At this time, does that cover the fact then that the property would come out from under the control of the hospital commission and be under the control of the city of Eureka Springs to dispose of as necessary? I understand totally that the hospital commission, when they spend their money, it must be directed for health care. Makes total sense. And buying the property, it makes sense that obviously that they would control it. But at some point, if there is no, heaven forbid, there be no hospital there, then does at this time release the land from the control of the hospital commission and move it under the jurisdiction of the city?
It would be as other assets of the hospital now are.
Okay.
It would have to go through the process at that time, but yes, the city ultimately is the owner.
What process are you talking about?
Well, right now, the hospital commission has a bank account. Same thing would have to happen there.
Okay.
It would have to go through going from being health care to being an asset that the city could use somewhere else, or possibly some cash might have to be turned over to the new entity. But
And I think also the same thing as the hospital building proper.
yes,
You know, if the hospital doesn't exist, then the city takes over everything, but it's got that process, and I'm sure it's going to have to be done by ordinance and to be able to do all that, if, heaven forbid, it ever happens.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to be sure that we weren't encumbering that some way past the point should something happen. Okay.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Snyder?
Okay. If the hospital commission, now I understand their money has to go to medical. If they would choose to like rent this property out to a non-hospital situation, is this legal or available to them, Tim?
no, under state law, their money is restricted, so they're not supposed to be renting it out to a supermarket or something of that nature.
So even in rental, it has to be medically involved.
And ultimately, the city owns it, and if they're not doing right, then the city would have to pull
Right.
in the...
But they are not able to like rent it out. Okay, thank you.
Not for just...
Only medical stuff.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Kendrick?
I would like to hear from Terry as to why he's opposed to this purchase.
Why am I opposed to the purchase? Well, I'm opposed to the purchase because I don't believe the property is worth the asking price, and that the expense of trying to build on it is going to be nearly cost prohibitive, just due to the terrain. But I also want to say that the current hospital property and anything that's added to that, you know, it's for their use but it all is in the name of the city. The city owns it entirely. No one else owns it. The city owns it. So, you know, if whatever happens, it doesn't leave the city. You know, it always is a part of it, unless the city chooses by ordinance to sell it off, which they can do. That's all.
Mr. Mitchell?
I make a motion, we assign this ordinance number and read it for passage.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Did I hear Mr. McClung?
Hear me what?
Vote.
No.
I did not vote aye, no.
Okay, any opposed?
No.
Okay. Is that 5-1?
It is.
Okay.
Thanks, I'll be saying it out loud then. The ordinance number will be 2262. An ordinance providing for the purchase of certain city property located at 28 Kings Highway. Whereas the City Council of the City of Eureka Springs, Arkansas has been informed that the Eureka Springs Hospital Commission proposes to purchase with its own funds certain real estate located adjacent to the current hospital property, namely the property located at 28 Kings Highway, parcel numbers 925-001, 88-002, 925-001, 95-000, and 925-000-193-000 property for use by the hospital. And whereas the land is being purchased for future city hospital use, and whereas title to such property may vest in the name of the City of Eureka Springs.
Must vest.
And, oh, thank you, must vest. Whereas the property should remain under the control of and for the use of the Commission at this time. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Eureka Springs, Arkansas as follows. Section 1. That the proposal of the Commission to purchase the property is approved. Section 2. That title to the property shall be held in the name of the City of Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Section 3. That the property shall be under the control of and for the use of the Hospital Commission at this time. Section 4. All provisions of the ordinances of the City of Eureka Springs in conflict with provisions of this ordinance are, and the same are hereby repealed, and all other provisions of the ordinances of the City of Eureka Springs not in conflict with the provisions of this ordinance shall remain in full force and effect. Section 5. Severability. Should any sentence, paragraph, clause, phrase, or section of this ordinance be adjudged or held to be unconstitutional, illegal, or invalid, the same shall not affect the validity of this ordinance as a whole or any part or provision thereof other than the part so decided to be invalid, illegal, or unconstitutional, and shall not affect the validity of the Eureka Springs Municipal Code as a whole. To approve the first reading?
We need a motion to approve the reading.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 2262, first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. McClung?
Just another thought that should this pass, it might be in the interest of the city and the hospital commission to have the architects do the feasibility in purchasing all the rest of the property down in the corner, including the log cabin cottages or inn, whatever that's called these days. I don't recall specifically, but and tie all that in all the way down to the corner, which would tie it all the way into Benton Street as well. So, you know, it might be something that at least needs to be looked into, in my opinion, and solidify that whole area.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes, ma'am.
If we could do that, that would also be able to tie it into the old high school property, which we've had discussions about how that would benefit.
Well, kind of separate. We got a street, but yeah, I understand.
Standing on
All right.
what he said.
Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of Ordinance 2262 being passed on its first reading, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
5-1.
Okay. Get a motion to read. Whoops.
You go
Yes,
ahead.
sir. No.
We need a motion. You need a motion. I make a motion to read ordinance 2262 on its second reading.
By title
only.
only.
By title only.
So you're
Second.
suspending the rules.
And suspend the rules. By title only.
Thank you.
Second.
Whatever Ann said.
Okay.
And a second?
I second
I'm going to
it.
ask Terry to do it.
All right. Any discussion? All right, hearing none.
Mr. McClung? Second reading.
No.
Ms. Kendrick?
No.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
4-2. Ordinance number 2262, an ordinance providing for the purchase of certain city property located at 28 Kings Highway.
Okay, now I need a motion to approve the ordinance on second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, that can be voice. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
5-1.
Now we need a motion to read ordinance on third reading, suspend the rules and read it on third reading by title only.
Yes, sir.
Second.
Any discussion?
Ms. Green?
Oh.
Ms. Snyder? Yes. Ms. Kendrick?
No.
Mr. McClung?
No.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
4-2. Ordinance number 2262, an ordinance providing for the purchase of certain city property located at 28 Kings Highway.
Okay, now I need a motion to approve the ordinance on its third reading.
2262 on its third reading, suspending the rules by title only?
No.
No, just approving the
Just approve
ordinance.
it, sorry. Okay.
Yes.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay.
Ms. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. McClung?
No.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Kendrick?
No.
4-2.
I make a motion that we invoke the emergency clause due to the timing of the nature of the sale.
Second.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Kendrick?
What is the hurry on this?
We have a closing set for Wednesday morning.
But what is the urgency of that sales date?
That's the one that was set for all the property owners to be there.
We do, if I may...
Please, Mr. Michael. Yes, sir.
It will be required to do a survey including the new property before the architectural firm can progress to its next step. So it will be necessary for us to either move forward with this or decide not to prior to the architectural firm taking its next step forward.
But you have it under contract, so you have control of the property. You could proceed with the survey at this time without ownership of the property.
Barbara, you have a comment? This is something I'm not really familiar with. Barbara probably knows more about it.
We have set this date. The date has been set for like 6 weeks, and it's a closing. We're ready and willing to go. And if we postpone it, then we have to have another meeting. It would postpone it for another month or two. What is your concern that it's going so fast?
My concern is it's vacant land. It's not currently being used. You're not going to use it right away. And so why are we quickly circumventing the normal process which would permit constituents to object to this or for council to change their mind?
It is not vacant land. There is a home on it and a road on it.
Is the home occupied?
No. That's why
And what will happen to the home?
You know, that's later. Right now, our architects...
That's my point.
Oh,
that
nice point.
Exactly. There are no immediate plans for this. I do not understand the urgency.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
If I may also chime in there, the architects a survey can be done and the architects can work off that survey. It's approved. So in 30 days it goes into effect anyway. So, you know, all you need is an extension on your closing and...
So why? Tell me why to extend
only because there's not any need for the emergency clause. We get a lot of people that complain about the overuse of the emergency clause. That's true.
Well, that's true. Originally, it was a resolution, which was a one-time thing, and that's what we've based everything on. Now, I understand it was changed to an ordinance, okay, but...
I can't speak to that, Barbara. I don't know.
Well, I'm telling. It started out, it was born a resolution to come before you tonight. Ann can tell you that. I gave her a copy, and the mayor a copy of the resolution from our attorney. So you're telling me that you want me to call the property owners and the realtor and say, hey, council wants another month. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes.
You can say it that way, yeah. I mean, it's that way, or that's just the way things are done unless you invoke the emergency clause.
Ms. Snyder?
This has been pointed out to the public. They have been aware of it. Nobody is having problems with it. I don't see that a delay is going to make any difference whatsoever other than to cause major confusion and screwing up all kinds of paperwork. The people already know, and I don't like using the emergency clause unless we absolutely have to, but this being related to land and people, it's better to just get it done, since it's going to be done anyway.
Mr. Mitchell?
I agree with everything Mickey said, surprised. And I totally understand Ms. Kendricks and Mr. McClung's view, but I think as a courtesy to the hospital commission, to the people that own the property, to the architects and everybody that's been involved in this endeavor of attempting to secure the future of the hospital and with all that goes along with it, I feel strongly that this council should go ahead, even though I don't like emergency clauses either, and let's wrap this up, let them close on the piece of property, let the architects move on, and let's just get it done.
I would like to add that we are in line. Our next thing is to get a survey of the hospital as it is now. And we have put that off until we had this land, so it could all be one survey.
You do have the land. You don't have it in ownership, but it's been approved.
You can still get the survey.
Why would we spend extra money on something we're not sure of?
You're sure it's just going to happen in 30 days?
There's going to be a 30-day appeal
Why
period.
This is our date on our contract. If we back out, the owners could back out. We're not sure of anything. We had a closing date written up of the 28th. And if we go and say, sorry, well, they can change their mind.
Okay.
You got it?
Yes, I'm a real estate attorney. I understand
Okay,
it.
so you know
You're
we're
in
under
too
the
much of a
contract.
rush.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I've bought and sold a lot of property, and I'm going to say this. If that house would have been $141,000 for me, I certainly would have thought about it to go down, clean it up, and flip it. We wait a month, and their closing's gone. Somebody else may say, and it's not going to be me, but somebody else may say, hey, that's a great deal.
And now that they know we want it, they certainly could go in and overbid us and take it, and then, I mean, it's real estate and attorneys.
We both
Mr. Mitchell?
understand real estate.
It makes no sense to not let them finish the deal based on the time of the contract. It absolutely makes no sense at all to delay it. And if this hospital loses the opportunity to get that house and that house and property was listed for well over $200,000.
220.
And it didn't sell. Yeah, I know it didn't sell. Everybody can argue all they want. But the bottom line is, if that property goes back up in the 140s, there's a high probability that it might sell. And I just don't think we should jeopardize it just because we're having this philosophical argument over something as stupid as an emergency clause. Give it a rest, folks.
Thank you for the voice of reason.
Yes, ma'am.
I
Ms.
don't
Green.
disagree with Mr. McClung and Ms. Kendricks. They're right. But you have a closing date. That's the only thing. If they didn't have a closing date, I would be with you all. But they do have a closing date.
I'm going to call the question.
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor of calling the question, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Yes.
So, on reading the emergency clause.
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. McClung?
Yes.
Ms. Schneider?
Yes?
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Kendrick?
This is on reading the emergency clause?
Reading the emergency clause.
Yes.
6-0. Emergency clause, due to the need to finalize the purchase to aid hospital services and for the health, welfare, and safety of the citizens of the city, those fees help assure, an emergency is hereby declared to exist, and this ordinance shall take effect upon its passage by the Eureka Springs City Council and signing by the Eureka Springs Mayor.
Thank you. Okay. Next order of business is an ordinance to add planning recommendations to the code and city.
March 12th.
What?
March 12th.
It's March 12th.
Oh, that's been moved to March 12th. Sorry, didn't see. I was going to read it on, and then we get it deferred. All right. Ordinance for paying down the bond payments.
Motion to discuss.
Second.
All right. Discussion, Mr. Mitchell.
I like everything in the ordinance. My one question would be, would we not attach to this ordinance an appendix that's the actual amortization schedule? I see the dates are here and the concept is here, but I'm just wondering, is it a problem to attach an amortization schedule to this as an appendix?
Mr. Weaver.
That was discussed, and it's, I believe, the Finance Department, in my opinion, that to attach those actual figures is probably not the wisest thing to do at the moment, because you're looking at projecting income for the next 5 or 6 years of the city, and the I&I may change that wouldn't permit that to be followed as strictly as if you put the numbers in there, and you may have to go back and change it every year or two if you do that. Where with this, it directs it to be, if there's more money available or less money available in one particular quarter, it can be shifted potentially and still meet the goals of the deadlines of time.
Okay.
Ms. Kendricks.
I have 2 comments. First of all, it says that additional funds from other sources, including the I&I, shall be applied. Well, that is really, I mean, that sounds as if all revenues from the water department are going to be applied to the bonds. So I think that's, the way it's written is way too broad. Because obviously we're going to have expenses. And then secondly, I have a concern that there may be some reason why we may have an emergency situation where we may have to use the I&I funds for an emergency and not apply it to the bonds. So I'd like to have some sort of escape hatch for those possibilities.
I'm going to ask Mr. Weaver, can you address that first part of her concern?
Well, the intent was here not to necessarily include other funds unless something becomes available that we're not expecting, but there is always the possibility of funds coming from another source that we haven't yet anticipated, since it is covering a several-year time period.
You mean such as a general fund, should we, like we've done in the past?
Potentially, or maybe some kind of federal grant to upgrade our system might become available.
So we're committing in advance things that we don't even know what they may be or if we're going to get them. I would like to make a motion to amend the ordinance to delete the words additional funds from other sources within the water and sewer department, including from. So that it reads that the current and future infrastructure and improvement I&I fees shall be applied to increase the amounts, etc.
Do I hear a second? All right, being none. Ms. Snyder?
All that Section 2 is doing is making it legally able to include other money besides just the I&I fees. That's all that does. It doesn't say we have to, it says we can.
It says shall.
Please.
Sorry.
Yeah, anything that is appointed to the, I'm continuing, anything that is brought forth to be put against this can be done. Therefore, if it's put in that area, it shall be done.
Yes, sir.
If we had the amortization plan, we would see that the payments are coming from the calculated I&I income. If you had that in front of you, it would make more sense. That's the problem. And also, I don't think the amortization plan included the use of all I&I funds, did it? There was still a reserve for emergency. But we need the amortization plan, I think.
Yes, sir.
I agree with Bob. Because he's
Agree
totally,
with everybody tonight.
he totally, I'm agreeing with everybody tonight. If I agree with Mickey, I'll agree with you, Bob. That makes total sense to me, and because, especially with the reserve funds and everything, so do we have to make a...
Well, just a minute, before we go into that, I think our finance director and city attorney discussed, I don't know whether y'all discussed having including the amortization chart.
We discussed that.
I think you need to. You're sitting on the wrong side of the microphone so we can hear you.
I'm Lonnie Clark, the finance director. I reside over in the corner of the courthouse on the lower level.
Nice place, isn't it?
It is very nice. Lots of windows. It's warm in the summer and cool in the winter. At any rate, the city attorney and I discussed not putting actual numbers in the ordinance because things could change to some degree in the future. Now, when we discussed this before in a workshop, we did have my attempt at putting this in some kind of order so that it would be understandable to everyone. And so I think either way you want to do it, if you want to have this attached, certainly it will be available and have it attached. But what I included was to pay off the bonds was the additional payments when the 2010 bond is paid off in 2020, continuing those monies, going on and putting those toward the 2008 bond, then pulling enough money, not all of the I&I funds, but just enough money to satisfy the 2008 bond issue in 2023. So we would have both of those bond issues paid off in 5 years.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is that the amortization would not completely be accurate in paying off the bonds using the entire I&I fees. Only a portion of the I&I are going into that.
We're only going to use a portion of the I&I fees.
Right. Okay.
Not all of them, because it was my understanding that from you all as council did not want, and you, Mayor, did not want to use the entirety of those funds because there might be other issues that would come up that would need funds for infrastructure and improvement. And so it's not taking all of those funds that we're projecting.
So again, I think what I'm hearing is that we're trying to keep this simple, and basically the ultimate goal is what the council wanted was to be able to make sure that this was going to be paid off by this date and using these funds to pay that off. And tying this into any amortization could possibly present some issues later down the road.
Well, that's true. And what we're just trying to do is to use money that we're spending on one bond issue when it's paid off to divert it over against the other and take some extra money from over here and that we have and complete it. That was my intent, and you know, the objective is to get the bonds paid in 5 years from now.
Okay. Ms. Snyder?
One of the biggest things we wanted to make sure that didn't happen was that a future council could not revert the money to something else. We wanted to make sure that these bonds got paid off with this, and the income from the I&I can go up and it can go down, which is why you can't give it a specific monetary figure. You can give an estimate. You could maybe put out a percentage, but the biggest thing is protecting this money for this use only. That's the whole point of this thing.
If you do, Mayor, if I might add, if you do attach this, it should be just as a memorandum, and not actual figures.
It's not going to be accurate.
That's fine.
Mr. McClung?
Mr. Mayor, what concerns me is that, and the city attorney can relieve my concern that the 2008 bonds, that the 2010 and 2008 bonds can be retired by April 1st of 2023. Are we tying ourselves to a date there that you know, should things come up that we have to, you know, go beyond that date, are we affecting ourselves there? That's the only concern I have. Everything else is all right with me.
Of course, I think the city attorney may, I think if that issue does come up, hopefully the finance director would advise us of that issue, and then we can make an amendment to the ordinance as necessary.
That would be correct. It would have to be done. An ordinance is of a permanent nature, but it can be amended by...
I just don't know if we're doing the right thing by holding our feet to the fire, you know, and putting that restriction upon ourselves
I guess that's kind of the good news, bad news about resolutions versus ordinance. It's a little bit more difficult with the ordinance, but it can be done. It's easier by resolution if that did come out.
You want to protect the funds and may ensure that they're spent accordingly. And I understand what you're saying and don't disagree, but we have to have an objective, I think, established somewhere. And so that's why that was on the original bond.
I believe that if we were to be there in 2023, that would be no problem, or any time in between, but you never know how
that's true.
Who's going to be sitting up here.
Well, hopefully this was the goal of this administration and council, was to be able to get us into a debt-free, at least on these bonds.
Yeah.
And so,
all for it.
Yeah. Mr. Mitchell?
No, I think actually y'all's conversation put an end to it and pretty well capped it, and that was the whole intent. If we're not sitting at this table, future councils can't have their fingers in the pie unnecessarily and diverting the money.
Okay. Any further comments?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to offer an amendment here.
Okay.
I think Section 3 should be Section 2, and I think Section 2 should become Section 3, and I think we should reconsider with the change that you offered up.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess we got a second. Did somebody second that?
Second.
All right. I'd like to get the city attorney's opinion, see if there's a problem.
Additional funds from all sources.
I'm not sure it solves what Ms. Kendrick points out about the shall. I think actually changing the shall to may be more of a thorough fix than removing the language.
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor?
I agree.
Mayor, Ms. Kendrick,
Yes,
yes,
ma'am.
Removing the shall and replacing it with a may just guts the purpose of this ordinance.
Yeah.
You have to have the shall, but why are we committing funds other than the I&I fees to this purpose? I mean, we may need those funds. I don't know where these funds are coming from. You know, the purpose of this was to commit the I&I funds, including those additional funds from other sources, whatever they may be. I mean, honestly, you could read this to take the entire revenues of the water department, water and sewer department, and apply it to these funds before we can pay expenses. That's the way it reads. I think this is poorly written.
Bob, what was the motion again, Madam Clerk?
To change
The
section...
amendment. Yeah, go ahead.
To change Section 3 and put it in place of 2, put 2 in place of 3, and X the language that Ms. Kendrick wanted on her motion.
Include that language that Ms. Kendrick wanted?
To take out the language that Ms. Kendrick wanted taken out in her motion that didn't get a second.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, all right. I'm sorry.
Why don't you take a 5-minute recess and work with the attorney and get that figured out.
All right. Does anybody have, Mr. McClung, you got a...
Well, I was just going to say that I understand now what she's talking about, that is what it is. Again, it's putting the pressure, the way it reads, that if it's short, no matter what, we have to make the payment, and that's because we're tying ourselves to the April 1st of 23. So I mean, what she says makes sense to me too.
All right, real quick.
Okay, I had a really lucky day, I won $1 million. I want to give $100,000 to Public Works to make payments strictly on these bonds to help pay them off. If you take out this part, that means I wouldn't be able to. Why can't we make it additional funds may be used in addition to this that will be used, that shall be used?
Okay, I think what we're going to try to have a 5-minute break, if that's okay. If I can get a motion.
Motion to 5-minute recess.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. You too. All right, we'll call the meeting back to order again. We still have a motion on the floor. What I'd like to do is have that deferred for right now, or withdrawn in a second, and then we will defer this until our next meeting. So if I can have the motion in a second.
Yeah.
You're talking about my
What's your
amendment?
motion?
Can we just defer the whole thing with the motion? With the motion to amend?
Well, there's a motion and amendment. If we can just have both of those withdrawn,
Yeah.
because when we come back, we'll still that motion.
And then just
still be
redo
on.
it again if it isn't changed.
Okay, I'll
Withdraw everything.
Yeah. Okay. The motion been withdrawn. Now, if I can get a motion to defer this to
So
our
moved.
next meeting.
Defer?
Do you want Ms.
Second.
Kendrick to withdraw her second?
Yes.
Thank you.
And a motion to defer to our next meeting.
Second.
And I already did.
Oh, you seconded, okay.
Okay, who,
They weren't listening.
Schneider to defer, Mr. Mitchell to second.
okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Should have done that to begin with. No. All right, our next one is an ordinance regarding diversion of grant funds.
So moved.
What,
Second?
Oh, to discuss.
Oh,
to
wait.
discuss?
For discussion.
Okay.
Say that, okay? Okay.
Second.
Okay, an ordinance clarifying the use of the funds received for grants approved by or applied for under the city council authorities. All right, yes, ma'am. Ms. Kendricks?
Are we on discussion?
Yes,
I'm sorry.
ma'am.
Yeah. I would like to make a motion to amend this ordinance to delete the words "before said entity proceeds with any action involving said funds," because I would like whichever entity this is that has
No, wait,
received,
where are you?
at the very end
Desires.
Section 1.
of Section 1, I'd like to take out the "for said entity proceeds with any action involving said funds." I would like City Council to be advised immediately upon a grant becoming impossible or if somebody wants to divert it. I don't want them to wait, like Parks has, for 6 months before they come and talk to us about something, or it could be a year, who knows, while they're deciding how to proceed with the funds. I'd like to know immediately that the funds are available. So that I would like to make a motion to delete that language, along with I'd like to add after the word "purpose," in the 4th line of Section 1, I'd like to add, "or if the commission, board, or sub-entity does not use the grant for the intended purpose or purposes within 4 months." So I basically am trying to stop these entities from sitting on grants and not advising City Council of that fact. I'm not saying they have to use it within 4 months, just that they advise us.
That's probably, I can tell you right now, we're going to come up with it. Our next item, or toward the very end, is this Flint Street. So that's been in business for 4 years. We just now finally got approval and got the awards out. So it's been 4 years. So if every 4 months we have to come back up here and say, this has been deferred. This has been deferred. And the council, well, why is it? Well, I'm not sure that's...
If I may,
That's the right
if
way
I
to
may
go.
say, that's not what I said. Well, no, it is what I said. I apologize. It is what I said. Okay. No, yeah, I know. Yes, you're right. You're right. So,
If you want to go back and rephrase your amendment
okay,
again.
I would like to rephrase it. I would like to amend Section 1 of this ordinance so that in the fourth line of Section 1, it reads, after the word purpose, or if the commission, board, or sub-entity does not use the grant for the intended purpose or purposes within 4 months, and to delete in the fifth and sixth line of Section 1 before said entity proceeds with any action involving said funds.
Let's go right back to what we were talking about. You put the time limit of 4 months on there.
I did. I'm open to discussing a longer period of time.
Well, we had 4 years on this one, this last grant.
And I think City Council should be advised every so often of what's going on with it.
Okay, it's an amendment. There's a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay. Vicki?
For the zillion years that I've lived here and the various grants things that I have been involved with either as a volunteer or whatever, even though Glenn is the one who's excellent on grants, I have come to understand them quite a bit. And grants and the receiving thereof are not black and white. They are not on a time period. They are not on a schedule or a calendar or anything else. There are grants that have been applied for that finally get approved 2 years later. There are grants that once you're approved, sometimes you get the money right away, sometimes you don't. There are situations that the city or the people in town who are applying for these grants are not going to waste other money getting stuff done, not knowing if they're going to get a grant, and it's going to take a whole lot longer than 4 months. There are some situations that grant money is being applied for, so a physical whatever can be done, which is going to take that grant money or parts of that grant money to pay someone to do this. Just because you get the grant money doesn't mean the very next day the people that have to do stuff can be there. Sometimes you have to wait because you've had to wait already for the money. Putting a time factor on there is ridiculous because it all changes. Letting council know that you've changed your mind or something is no longer possible or feasible is fine. I have no problem with that. Trying to make them check in like a little kid is ridiculous.
Mr. Mitchell?
I thought the purpose that we were doing this ordinance for was so that grants wouldn't be moved around or diverted, as it says here. I understand where Ms. Kendricks is going with it. I do have a problem with the time frames at all. And unless I am not reading Section 1 correctly, I think Section 1 very clearly expresses what I thought the purpose of this ordinance was, and that was to keep grants from being diverted for other purposes and that City Council would know. And so I guess I'm comfortable with Section 1.
Mr. McClung?
I think that it's Section 1 is worded incorrectly myself, and I agree with what Mr. Mitchell said, and that I think it should say that any commission, board, or sub-entity of the city, unless otherwise required by state or federal law, that the desire to divert the funds for another purpose must first receive the approval for the city council for that purpose, and clean it up, and that's simple, and that's all it needs. Because David's right, that's all we're wanting to do is just make sure that it's not shoved off on something else, and that's it.
I have a problem I think this all goes back to the grant for the Dairy Hollow Trail. The problem is it's been sitting around for well over 6 months with Parks doing nothing about it. It's possible that it could be used for another purpose, but we don't know what those purposes may be. In fact, if we hadn't otherwise known about the grant, it could have been sitting around in Parks doing nothing indefinitely until they, quote-unquote, decided to do something about it. Well, right now they're doing nothing about it. We could be using these funds. We were awarded these funds, and the City Council may want to use them for something else.
We're limited. We cannot.
Yeah.
There's a mistaken concept there. Those funds can only be used for certain items. We can't go in and last month or last meeting somebody said, well, why didn't we use it ECHO? Why don't we use it for the food bank? That's impossible. We're trying to micromanage from the parks or any other commission that gets grants and telling them what they can use and where to put their grants. That's I'm sorry, to me, that's their opinion. That's their use. Mickey?
Yeah, I'm just going to point the same thing out. Parks got this. The city didn't. EUREKA didn't apply for it. The council didn't apply for it. Parks did. Parks is the one who can use it. They can decide what to do with it. They can decide when to do with it. Now, if they change their plan, yes, they have to get approval from us because in the end, we're liable for the match. But this is their money, not ours. We don't tell them what to do. They are their separate entity, and yes, they have to answer to us, but we do not sit and say, you're going to do this, that, and the other. That's not how commissions work.
I wasn't on the council when you gave them a resolution, but I think what Ms. Kendricks is trying to say, or what we're trying to do, is when we make a resolution for Dairy Hollow, they need to come to us if they're going to change it. You know, Mickey's right. If Parks gets it, it's Parks' grant. But I don't think they should be able, after we do a resolution for a certain area, to be able to divert it somewhere else. And I think that's the spirit of this.
Yes.
Well, okay, we're kind of talking about the amendment. It's supposed to be on there. Anybody you want to discuss the amendment?
Oh, I have lots of things to say now. First of all, Flint Street, if they needed a fitness trail, I think they should be considered for this money if Parks is going to give it away. That was my point. But I also I don't think there should be a time limit, because as long as they're intending to use it for the purpose that they started out wanting the money for, it doesn't bother me if it takes them a year or 2 years to get the project done. I think this thing says exactly what we wanted it to say. If they decide to use the funds for anything different, they have to come back here for approval.
If an ordinance was in effect where they had to, if they were going to change it, what they want to use the grant for, and they had to come to us right off the bat and do that, and we said no, that the trail would have been built already. So there's the time element is really ineffectual, I think. But I think we're trying to complicate something that's really not that complicated if we'll simplify the whole ordinance.
Let's try to wrap this up on this.
Done with
Okay,
it.
Ms. Kendricks.
If you will withdraw your second, I will amend my motion.
I'll withdraw it.
So that I simply delete at the end, before said entity proceeds with any action involving said funds, so that they need to report immediately upon their intent to divert. That's stupid. Not simply.
Okay, so you want to say full notice? for another purpose or for approval by city council,
period.
period. And then,
And that's it. Then, what's the point? So that they need to report.
so the motion is to
Says that.
delete before said entity proceeds with any action involving said funds.
Correct.
Okay, let me...
Okay. I'll second that.
I got it.
All right, I want to ask Mr. Weaver, do you see a problem with that?
I think, honestly, if you delete those words, you defeat part of what at least some of the council is arguing, because you're arguing that it needs to be immediate. If they just decide not to act, there's no restriction on how long they could just leave the grant laying there. This says that they have to before they take any action, so they can't start plotting and planning what to do with the grant without coming back and telling council by this. Otherwise, they decide it's unfeasible or they cannot do something, and they just stop acting. And there's no requirement that they come back.
I'll withdraw my second.
I'm sorry?
Okay, I'll withdraw my second. Are you going to withdraw your motion?
No, I wasn't going to withdraw my motion because I disagree.
I'm going to call the question.
On the amendment. We had the second on the amendment, so we've got to call the question for the amendment.
Oh, somebody's...
And the amendment is to delete the word before said entity proceeds with any action involving said funds.
But she withdrew her second.
Did you withdraw your second?
The amendment was not withdrawn. Withdrawing the second didn't do anything.
No, and we called a question.
So all those in favor
We need a second on that, please.
of what, calling this question?
Yes.
Okay. Did we get a second?
We did, yes, Melissa, just now.
Okay. All those in favor of calling the question on the amendment, signify by saying aye.
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 Call. Sorry. Roll call.
Ms. Kendrick?
This is on calling the
Calling the
question. I'm in favor.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. McClung?
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
6-0.
Now the motion is on the amendment to delete before said entity proceeds with any action involving said funds. Is that a roll call? Just voice.
It's just voice.
Okay, all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm sorry, I would like to vote, but I need to understand what it is again, and I'm not really sure.
Deleting the words, the last sentence, before said entity proceeds with any action involving said funds.
Is this discussion or are we?
No.
Voting.
We weren't,
Okay,
that's
the
what
city
calling
council
the
has word
question
of the grant becomes impossible or if the commission for entities.
Everybody understand the motion or the amendment? Take the last sentence, half part of the sentence. All right. Mr. McClung,
No.
you understand what we're voting on?
Huh?
You understand what we're voting on?
Yeah, I just sat here and read it a couple of times to that point, yes.
All right, so Mr. McClung,
Votes no.
There was one yes vote, and that's all I've heard so far.
let's do a roll call.
Okay.
This is on the amendment.
This is on the amendment to take that last phrase out of Section 1.
Period behind council. I got it. Okay.
Pardon me?
Never mind, I'm confused. I'll be fine.
Mr. McClung,
On the amendment,
do you want to eliminate that last part of Section 1?
no.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Ms. Green?
No.
Ms. Kendrick?
Yes.
Ms. Schneider?
No.
Mr. Mitchell?
No.
Mr. Mayor?
1-5.
All right, Mr. McClung.
I think it would clean it up better if we ended it in the last line after the word approval.
Where are you? That would work.
It said,
All right, so sub-entity desires to divert the funds for another purpose for approval.
Doesn't make any sense.
No.
You don't want the approval to come from, oops, sorry.
it's going, well, that's why it's going back to city council. Shall be referred back to city council when it is awarded and the purpose of the grant becomes possible. So it's coming back to us for approval, period, the end. Well, I can make it a motion.
All right, you want to make a motion to amend it by saying period after the word approval?
Yes, thank you.
Second.
Okay, I think we've kind of already discussed all this, but Ms. Snyder?
I'd like to ask our city attorney what his professional opinion is in regards to this whole paragraph and anything we might, should, or should not do to it.
Well, I think if you take the suggestion or the amendment is now before and ended at approval, the problem you have is that you're not going to eliminate what Parks has just got through doing that stirred this whole matter. Because they already told you, Mr. Featherstone, when he was here last week, or last council, said that they intended, before they actually diverted and spent the money anywhere else, to bring it back to council. So if there's no time frame and they can do all their studies and talk and do all their other actions and then bring it back, you're going to be in the exact same position. You can still say no, but in the meantime, they will have gone through what they're already going through at this point with the funds.
I don't agree with Mr. Weaver because they have to come back to us unless they're going to do it because they want to be subversive and trying to hide something from us. So I think we'll be all right, personally.
Ms. Kendrick?
I agree. I think that they've already expressed their desire to divert the funds for another purpose, and so the ordinance as amended would cover that.
All right, any further discussion on the amendment? Yes, ma'am.
Doesn't the ordinance as written exactly say what we've been trying to say?
Some appear to think so, and some don't.
Well, I think I would go by the city attorney's opinion.
Let's just vote on the amendment and go from there and see where we end up. All right, I'm going to do another roll call on the amendment. Please, ma'am.
Mr. Mitchell?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Ms. Schneider?
No.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Kendrick?
Yes.
Mr. McClung?
Yes?
3-3. You can choose to not vote.
I'm going to not vote.
So we're back to the original ordinance?
Yep. All right, Mr. Mitchell.
I make a motion we assign this ordinance a number and read it on its first reading.
Second.
Discussion. Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Got that one done.
6-0. Ordinance number 2264. Oh, the number will be 2264.
That's what you said.
Yes. An ordinance clarifying the use of funds received for grants approved by or applied for under City Council authority. Whereas the City Council of the City of Eureka Springs, Arkansas has made a review of the use of funds from grants received under its authority, and whereas the Council believes to be in the best interest of the people of the city Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Eureka Springs, Arkansas that Section 1, any grants received by any commission, board, or sub-entity of the city, unless otherwise required by state or federal law, shall be referred back to the City Council if it is awarded and the purpose of the grant becomes impossible, or if the commission, board, or sub-entity desires to divert the funds for another purpose, for approval by the City Council before the entity proceeds with any action involving said funds. Section 2, repeal clause. All ordinances, resolutions, and parts thereof in conflict herewith are hereby repealed to the extent of such conflict.
Motion to approve ordinance on first reading?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Council wish to hold off on the following reading until next time?
Yes. Parks had indicated that they were going to turn money over to a private business, and that business would then use those funds to construct this trail, manage the construction of the trail. Is there anything now
I didn't hear that.
Pardon?
I didn't hear that.
It was in the newspaper article.
Which newspaper?
The one that started all this about 3 months ago. Yeah.
I see two
National
newspaper
Enquirer?
reporters. but
Pardon?
That's not, they can't turn the money over to anybody. They do the money unless it's put out for bid.
We do the money.
We do, yeah. We do the bids. I don't know what you're talking about, Bob.
The newspaper article. We discussed it the first night. That was one of the reasons that council got so upset, was that...
We got two newspaper article people shaking their heads, so I'm not sure either.
Oh. The article from the morgue, I'll bring it to the next meeting.
Okay. All right, if you can get to us before the next meeting, really help. I'm sorry, Bob. I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Oh, that's okay.
In a minute.
All right.
Your age.
I know, it's, that's, yep. Okay, you're right. All right, so that brings us to number 5.
Motion to discuss.
Second.
City Attorney's opinion on posting notices and issuing fines for code violations. I think we're talking about absentee owners and...
I don't see a problem necessarily with posting the notices. We cannot impose a fine, I don't think, effectively, where we can't get personal service on the individual. Now, some of these entities are going to be corporations, and they may have officers within Arkansas or employees within Arkansas that would allow personal service. But the ones that are privately owned, if you put up a notice, the problem is somebody's just going to go up there and probably tear it down, and it's not going to do too much. We could, as was discussed last time, try to impose, if we have a loss, some type of monetary lien against the property, but that's not really a criminal fine. We can't. Trying to prosecute someone who is not before the jurisdiction of the court in person is difficult enough, where they've been arrested and been cited. But trying to do it where you have not actually got service on them of the citation or an arrest or whatever would be nigh impossible in this situation. There are instances where people are prosecuted where they run off from a jurisdiction after they've been noticed, but as far as posting notices on the property, that might discourage some people from using the property if it's illegal. But if there's someone doing cleaning on the property, they'll probably simply take down the notice.
Is that something that's administratively can be done, or do we need resolutions?
I think that that's something that probably could be administratively done.
Okay. Ms. Kendricks?
I think my question would be, is it possible, perhaps not under existing ordinances, but under a revised ordinance, to assess a lien on the property for unpaid or for their not getting a business license or for not paying CAPC taxes?
Under our current scheme, probably not, but yes, with tweaking of those, yes, we probably could get a lien. They would be small liens,
They,
most likely, but they would not be the criminal penalties that those two statutes carry at this time.
they would be something.
They would be something.
But if I'm not mistaken, I think, and David and Terry can address that, their license can be revoked, and they can be, then they're subject to operating a business without a license.
But that again is a criminal offense, and we'd still have to catch up with them.
They're doing that anyway.
Yeah, you're already, and if they're serving alcohol or anything, the ABC pulls their liquor license real quick. Mickey?
I'm not totally up on our current, what the current standing is in regards to safety issues and approval by fire departments and stuff. I know that they have to have, part of getting a license is to have all this stuff approved, right, Tim? So if they are operating without a license, odds are like what, 99% that no, they haven't had an inspection by the fire department, and therefore if someone is going to pay money to stay there, is this not a major crime that could cause lots of trouble? And if someone knows that one of these places is operating illegally, when they see someone go in, could that person not maybe call the fire department and say, you need to go over there, they might be in trouble?
Somebody in trouble?
It would most likely not be our local firemen. It would have to come from a higher level.
I don't know. What's a higher level?
On the state fire marshal's office.
I just heard
Our guys don't do it?
talking, but I
We
don't
have a fire marshal. And he has certain limited ability, but when you start trying to close a business and if you're going to tell people that they're in danger, you're tantamount to closing the business. It usually comes from a higher authority of at least the county level, if not state level.
But it would be feasible, I mean, if necessary. If things got so bad, that's the only way we could get their attention. I still like the idea of chaining the door closed.
Ms. Green?
Can we chain the door closed? No?
I asked last time, they didn't tell me.
One of the things in our code, it says that you can charge up to $250 a day for a violation. Couldn't, as Ms. Kendrick said, put a lien on it.
The $200 or $250, there are various entities that allow that throughout our code, are actually fines. They're violations. They're not misdemeanors. They're below misdemeanors, but they're still a fine. And so they're still criminal. They still go through the criminal court to be imposed.
Okay.
And in order to get into criminal court, they have to be served.
Right,
Yeah.
but they're actually not a business. We wouldn't be shutting down a business. We'd be shutting down something that was operating illegal without a business license, without city sanction.
But to do that, you have to haul them before a judge.
Okay. And can you put on a notice that removal is another fine? It might stop somebody from removing it.
I suppose if you could draft an ordinance that the notice is, removal of the notice itself is a crime, and then if you could catch the person taking it down, I suppose.
Mr. Mitchell.
So, we've had an interesting discussion here, but we don't have a solution. So, my question, I guess, is, it looks like there's a lot of things kind of in place, but the whole key to this whole issue seems to be enforcement.
Well, I'm my thoughts, Mr. Mitchell, was if somebody has a note of somebody operating an illegal business, notify my office and we'll see what can be done. And let's take some procedures. We've got, if they're operating without a license, we'll see what we can do to shut them down. We'll have the building inspector go down and issue if we can find somebody, or try to figure it out. We have to know who it is that's operating without the license.
So it is enforcement. It just needs to enforce what's here.
Well, it may be. It may be if the person, though, if it's an Airbnb, and that's what it sounds like, those people can be living in Seattle, Washington. And to be able to, now hopefully there's a manager there and we can serve the manager. But we've been pretty good about catching most of the Airbnbs in town, I think. If there's one that we haven't caught, let me know, because,
oh, yeah. That's because you can go on Airbnb, and Glenna looks through the HomeAway and VRBO, and she looks at all the sites to find these people that sneak in there. This one case that Melissa has brought up is a gentleman that is just so far avoiding everybody and continuing to run. Well, I think that's what started with the posting. If
it's one person, it's not an issue. It's something we just need to try to attack, and we just need to know who it is.
So far.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
There's the one in question, but today a friend told me that does maintenance work that he was asked by another one if he could start running it. And this person lives out of state, and the maintenance person said, no, you have to get, how are they going to catch me?
Well, so you just let us know.
Okay. All right.
And then we'll just go from there, And
also,
we'll put a notice on their doors, and we'll keep putting notices up there.
Okay. And this notice was to extend. We have some properties in neglect, and I know Bobby's gotten hold of a couple of them, but a couple of them again are living out of state. If we could put a notice on their doors.
Again, let me know, and we'll get those issues going out.
I will.
Yeah. Okay. We've also had another issue. For example, also another issue is we had somebody complaining about somebody speeding on a dirt road. Mm-hmm. And we can't stop anybody unless we have a policeman there witnessing it. We don't have the citizens arrest issue. And so that's a whole another issue, that there may be a violation, there may not be. So it's almost hard to...
If that is a maintained street that they're speeding on, can the person that is complaining build a speed bump on that street?
No, and it's been taken down.
No, it hasn't.
Well, it was. Okay. It had been put back. But I've driven on that street, and I can't go over 20 miles an hour, so I don't know.
No, and I don't either, but it's wrecking my car, because he keeps digging potholes.
Well, we keep, of course, that's your automatic speed bumps.
Okay. No, he digs the potholes.
Well, we got an automatic speed bump. Anyway, that's a separate issue.
Okay.
All right. Let's go on to our next item, our final item. We do have, if I can get a motion to discuss the bid opening.
So moved.
Second. Are we going to talk about the workshop? Or?
Well, we're workshop scheduled for March 12th at 4:30. I don't know. I think everybody's got a notice of that.
Yep.
That's it.
While we're at it, can I ask about the other workshop, the City Parks workshop? That was set up without consultation.
I set up that.
Well,
I asked for the parks and the city council to get together so we can communicate. We seem to have a failure to communicate sometimes, and I want us to communicate between the two groups. That is the whole purpose of this workshop. Is on the issues that are going on. There's a lot of misinformation that's going on, and I wanted to get off square.
Is that date?
I don't know if that date's been set yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got something and we're told to be there.
March 6th.
Okay, if you can be there, be there.
And
I was hoping that the council would have said that you could be there or not.
I had other plans. That's why I was kind of surprised that I was just told that was the date.
I think that
Because normally
was a suggested date. If we got conflicts, let us know, and we'll try to rearrange it so you can be there.
Okay.
I'm not trying to exclude, I want the council and the parks.
I mean,
This is a workshop between the two groups.
I want to be there. I was just kind of surprised because in other
Let's
workshops we've been
just
given options.
notify my office, and we'll try to schedule a date that's satisfactory to everybody. We thought that was. I apologize if it's not.
So are we talking the workshop on the 6th? I thought everybody was good with that.
Well, evidently Ms. Kendricks didn't, but we'll rework that one. So, all right. If we can go on and discuss the bids we received, and what I'm needing is, this is a bid for storm drainage repair on the Flint Street, actually right next to Grand Central Hotel. This is a grant that we received almost 4 years ago to this, sometime close to around this time period, for $220,000. Our bids came in at $217,950. However, the grant included engineering fees. But what I would like is for the council to approve awarding the bid contingent upon money being available for this project. We've been told that Jay Stallings with Northwest Arkansas Economic Development pretty much assured us that he can find us some additional money to cover the grant that we're missing.
Can you give me the figures again, Butch? I'm sorry.
The $217,950.
That's what the bid is?
That's what the bid was.
What was the grant for?
220.
Okay. So we have the money.
So it's covered.
No, that included engineering fees. Engineering fees are probably around $20,000. And we also have to hire an archaeologist. So we're missing it by about 15,000 on there that we're trying to find extra money for.
And this was the only one that put in a bid, this company?
We only had one bid, that's true.
Wow.
So how much short are we?
Probably close to about 20,000. On that. Mr. McClung?
I make a motion, we proceed.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you all. I was pleased, I will say that the bid came in, it's close to the estimates that we got.
When you look at the time frame that's gone by, I'm surprised they weren't higher than that.
Yeah. So, all right, agendas.
Nothing for me.
Okay.
I would like to add to the agenda the use of the Lake Leatherwood Park sales tax for uses that appear to be inconsistent with the master plan.
I'll second that. This is for discussion.
For discussion.
Okay. Speak up.
Use of Lake Leatherwood sales tax. Okay.
Butch, I have one.
Yes, sir.
Since we're going to have the workshop on the meeting locations, I'd like to go ahead and have city meeting locations on the agenda so that it's an official agenda topic. We're having the workshop before it, but I think we need to have it as an agenda topic.
Okay.
Second. So the results they're in, right?
Anybody else?
Just
all right. Let's go down with city council comments. And I'm going to start with Mr. McClung this time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome.
Party on, Garth.
Ms. Kendrick?
I have no comments.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes, I didn't bring my Robert's Rules of Orders when I needed it, but I would just like to say I think that removing an agenda item should be left up to the people who have added it to the agenda. I'm not the kind that speaks up real quickly. It takes me a minute to formulate my thoughts. And, you know, Mr. Mitchell tonight made a motion, or just said, let's take number 6 off the agenda, and you agreed with him and X'd it off. You have no idea what I was going to say, and you have no idea what Ms. Schneider was going to say. So I think in the future, the only people that should be able to remove an item from the agenda are the people that put the item on the agenda. That's all I have to say.
Ms. Schneider?
No, I agree. That's about it.
Yeah, Ms. Green?
When I agreed with Ms. Kendricks, it does not mean I'm anything against parks, but I think if this is a discussion I'm hearing a lot about, and I just think it needs to be brought up.
Mr. Mitchell?
You know, I was going to respond to Bob, but I think I just won't at this time.
Good.
All right. We have a lot of mayor's comments coming up on March 4th here in the auditorium at 2:30 p.m. We have We Got Talent, which is a Carroll County music group that goes to scholarship fundraising to send area youths to music camps all over the country. That includes my comments. We don't have much going on the next 2 weeks. We got a break, I guess, in EUREKA, although I've been seeing a lot of people here. So,
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.